welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie, I'm the senior editor here, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Frank Sherlock, VP International at CallMiner. Frank, it's great to have you join us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and thanks for inviting me, Charlie. Looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, well, it's been a long time since we last spoke, Frank, and I'm looking forward to it. And today we're kind of going to be dissecting some of the findings within a recent CallMiner report, kind of looking at the current state of customer experience. So maybe first off, Frank, I don't know if you could give us a quick little intro into the study and kind of what you tried to uncover.
Yeah, so we produced a report we call the CX Landscape Report. The CX industry is evolving, and the aim of the report simply was to try and understand some of the current trends, the challenges, and the opportunities that organizations are facing today. We used a third-party company to survey 450 customer experience and contact center leaders in the US, the UK, Ireland, and South Africa across several different verticals, for example, retail, healthcare, and financial services. And based on that data, we wanted to try and understand where we saw the biggest gaps or opportunities that organizations face today. The report really talked about it in terms of the key elements of CX: data collection, the analysis of that data, employee experience, and the use of technology such as artificial intelligence to support those elements.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see a good spread, especially across a large number of respondents across a big geography as well. So yeah, I think my next follow up to that would simply be kind of what are your key takeaways?
So the report's very comprehensive. I'll explain a bit later on where the audience can go to get a copy of the report. But there's a couple of things that struck a chord with me, that all, and I'm talking 100% of the senior contact center decision makers report that their organizations have faced challenges regarding customer experience over the past year. And the most common challenge they face was dealing with customer vulnerability. 40% of the respondents had said that they had challenges with customer vulnerability, and that doesn't surprise me. There's been a rise in vulnerability. We're not just talking about health vulnerability. We've got mental health vulnerability, financial vulnerability, and even things like digital vulnerability, where organizations have pushed through transformation programs for self-service, leaving perhaps digitally vulnerable people behind. And then I guess one of the other takeaways there was the customer expectations of customer experience. Customers are ever more demanding, and the organizations have struggled to I think that 36% of the respondees reported that one of their biggest challenges in managing customer experience has been dealing with those changing customer behaviors and expectations. And I guess the other interesting takeaway that I found, if you allow me to perhaps put a third one across, would be that 6 out of 10 of the organizations reported that they're unable to accurately track the return on investment regarding customer data and feedback. And only a quarter believe that the C-suite and executive leadership currently place the most value on CX. So really, it begs the question, to me anyway, if you can't accurately track ROI, what are the CX metrics that board members and executive leaders are getting? And they're getting these on average twice a month. And another takeaway, I think we're going to touch on it a bit later on, Charlie, was there's a group of people in organizations outside of customer service that don't place the most value on customer experience. So some really interesting takeaways there around vulnerability, changing customer behaviors, return on investment, and who's using the data.
Yeah, absolutely. And lots of great stuff there. I mean, on the vulnerability point, especially, it's, with the cost of living crisis as well that's coming up. And your point about the kind of digital deserts that struck a chord with me too, because I saw a stat the other day, was it 7 or 11% Americans still don't have access to the internet, which blew my mind. Kind of things. So there's digital vulnerability, as you were saying, and lots of good stuff into kind of changing customer behaviors and a detachment between the C-suite and customer experience too. So lots of good stuff there. But you kind of mentioned you saw some kind of gaps within customer experience, and one of the kind of key findings that I took away from the report, and I'll quickly put a graph up onto the screen now, which is kind of taken from it. And it seems to show that there's more investment going into CX, yet kind of the challenges remain, and there's a lack of belief in CX, as you kind of alluded to there, of from teams such as kind of the IT and C-suite, which is perhaps preventing a bit of customer centricity, and it seems to be quite a troubling trend. From this graph that's there, Frank, I don't know, you have any thoughts of what this might tell us?
I think it's a graph that says that there's a great opportunity here to use the data to help the wider business beyond just the customer services department. So if you could properly harness the data, both solicited through surveys and unsolicited through things like conversation analytics, and analyze that in such a way as to give insight to operations to improve their processes, to give insight to marketing, perhaps to understand brand perception and competitor intelligence, to give information to IT to understand things like accessibility issues, etc. If you could give these parts of the organizations valuable data, I think they'd better understand customer perceptions and how they can help influence the overall customer experience. So to me, this graph really says, if you want to improve your business performance, everybody needs to be pulling in the same direction, and they do that by providing them data that allows them to understand how they can influence the customer experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you were much more optimistic than I was there, but the enterprise connectivity has been a huge theme in CX. It kind of shows maybe it's still a big opportunity for brands out there to kind of connect customer insights across the organization, and potentially it brings a new role for the contact center and kind of being this hub of customer insight, which they can share kind of through with tools such as speech analytics. But yeah, if I'm going to be
Sorry.
Excellent. And if I'm going to kind of be the downer, I guess, on the conversation in this conversation, I saw there was kind of another number of other kind of challenges that were uncovered regarding the current state of CX within this report. Were there any others that caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, to me, a lot of organizations, there's two areas really. A lot of organizations are not using the data that they have already at their disposal, i.e. what's happening in these interactions and understanding those at depth. That there's too heavy a reliance perhaps on solicited versus unsolicited, and there's a role to play for both solicited and unsolicited. But only across these 450 people that we surveyed, only 48% of the organizations were recording calls to collect data. So they didn't have the ability to actually look back into that interaction to truly understand what were the factors that drove the positive or negative customer experience. And 62% felt that they didn't collect all the data that they actually need to measure customer experience. So that's a real big challenge with only 44%. I think it's 44%. I could be corrected on that. We're using unsolicited feedback in any level to understand the experience of their employees. So lots of organizations that were recording calls and perhaps analyzing the unsolicited feedback in those calls were using it with a lens focused on just what the customer, what the customer was saying versus what the employee was saying and how the employee experience was impacting the customer experience. one of the most challenging things that I seen in the report was over a third of the respondees were challenged by this customer service rep disengagement or lack of productivity. And so that's a problem that organizations need to grapple with. How do they focus on not just the customer experience, but how the employee experience plays with the customer experience?
Yeah, again, lots of really good stuff there. I can't believe that call recording statistics. I mean, that's kind of just blown my mind. But yeah, especially also to kind of with the employee experience, those stats there really maybe do kind of highlight a new need to engage and kind of support the new contact center agents that are coming into these operations. But the trend that I mentioned before, kind of, there's more, seems to be more investment from the report, yet is CX becoming much better in terms of the service that people receive. What reasons for hope for the future does this report give you?
Well, I think one of the big reasons for hope is if organisations just take stock of the data and feedback sources that they have at their disposal, that there are listening posts perhaps that they aren't collecting data from, and they could be. Call recording, Charlie, is just one example there. That's a fantastic listening post for if you're able to get that data, harness that data, and analyse that data. It provides a fantastic perspective over and above what may be in the solicited side. So first point I'd say, reason for hope. There's lots of data sources available. There's lots of listening posts that they could be collecting data from and should be. Second point is using technology. The report, there's a heavy reliance on manual processes to measure and analyze customer experience. I think there's a great opportunity to be more holistic in how you can analyze that data and move beyond manual processes that will help them take CX to the next level. And I think that for me, one of the biggest opportunities that gives me hope for the future is if you understand the connection between the frontline employee and CX, improving the experiences of the frontline employees that are servicing your customers will provide better outcomes for the customers, improved customer experience for the business, and better outcomes for the business and happier employees. So to me, they'd be the three areas. Use the listening posts that are available to you, use technology to move from manual to automation in terms of data collection and analysis, and take care of those frontline employees and do the right thing by the frontline employees so they provide the best possible experience to the customers.
Yeah, I like that. Kind of the data is out there. It's kind of go and get it. Almost a lot of the message was there, but especially also again your point on the employees at the end there, and linking that back to a point that you made right at the start of this call. Kind of customers are vulnerable right now, but so are employees maybe too. So finding new ways to support them, what the data tells you about how you can actually do that. Is an interesting field for the future as well. So I think that's a kind of great place to wrap up the conversation. Maybe my final question to you, Frank, would be kind of where can our viewers go to find out more of what you've discussed and kind of the report?
Well, very simple, Charlie. If they go to CallMiner.com, there's a number of CX attributes and articles available there within the Learning Centre. Go to the search bar, put in CX Landscape Report, and they can download the report from there. So just visit CallMiner.com, CX Landscape Report, download it from there. It's a comprehensive report. There's some really interesting data. Obviously, in our short conversation, can't go into all of the data in detail, but there's lots and lots of very useful data there.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'll do also for everybody watching is I'll put a link to the report into the description box too, and CallMiner's website, as Frank just said. But I think that's the ideal place to end today's conversation. But thank you very much for joining me today, Frank.
Thank you, Charlie. It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. And thank you also to everybody for watching. Bye for now.
Bye for now.